China is completing the deployment of the world's largest weather modification system, covering an area of 5.5 million km². Against this backdrop, Russia has already faced sharp weather anomalies, floods, destructive tornadoes in the Urals, and tornadoes in regions where they had never occurred in the entire history of meteorological observations. Meanwhile, far eastern regions bordering China have faced abnormal drought that reduced river flow by 40%. This is happening simultaneously with record precipitation in Chinese border provinces. But Russia is not the only victim. In India, monsoons that had passed with mathematical precision for centuries have shifted 300 kilometers north, leaving agricultural lands without water, on which the lives of 240 million people depend. This is occurring as China's weather influence system has begun its work. The international community is sounding the alarm. Existing international agreements do not provide for regulation of weather weapons of such scale. Before our eyes, an invisible war is unfolding for control over the planet's life support system, and the first victims are Asia, India, and other countries bordering the new climate superpower. What is actually happening, and does China's new project really pose a threat to many countries? More than half of China's territory will soon be covered by a climate control system capable of stealing rain from neighboring countries. This is the official plan of the Chinese government that should be implemented this year. Imagine a device capable of causing torrential rain over parched fields on command, or conversely dispersing clouds before important state events. This is exactly the kind of system China is building now, and the scale of the project is truly impressive. 5.5 million square kilometers. For understanding, this is territory exceeding the size of all of India. The main mechanism of influence is cloud seeding, dispersing silver iodide from the ground and from the air to cause rain or conversely prevent it. The technology is not new, but precisely the scale and systematic nature of its application alarms neighboring countries. Silver iodide is a chemical compound whose crystals are structurally similar to ice crystals. When these particles enter supercooled clouds, they serve as nuclei for ice crystal formation, which when enlarged turn into precipitation. By dispersing this substance from aircraft or using rockets, one can stimulate rainfall where needed. The Chinese enthusiastically talk about the project's peaceful goals. Preventing floods and stimulating agriculture, fighting forest fires and heat sounds noble, almost like humanity's dream of power over nature. But China's neighbors, especially India and Russia, have serious concerns about such plans, and not without reason. For India, this is not just an abstract threat. The country's northern border runs through mountainous regions where roads and infrastructure are extremely vulnerable to flooding. Moreover, major Indian rivers originate precisely in those Chinese mountains, where climate control systems are planned to be installed. Manipulations with rainfall in these areas could have tragic consequences for all of India's water supply. But the main concern is not even this. The key problem is interference with natural moisture transport in the atmosphere. Global climate change has already made Indian monsoon rains absolutely unpredictable. If they stop completely due to Chinese weather manipulations, much of India could turn into desert. For a country with almost 1.5 billion people, a significant portion of whom work in agriculture, this is a serious threat. From 2012 to 2017, China invested approximately $2.3 billion in its climate control systems. And the results are impressive. For example, in Xinjiang region, they managed to reduce annual hail by 70%. But what if these technologies are used not only to protect their own fields, but also as an instrument of geopolitical pressure? And unlike nuclear weapons, whose use is obvious and has immediate consequences, proving the use of climate weapons is practically impossible. How do you distinguish natural drought from artificially induced? How do you understand whether the flood that hit your country is natural or provoked by your neighbor? This is where the special danger lies. Its use can always be disguised as natural processes while maintaining diplomatic face on the international arena. Actually, the idea of weather control is not new. People have dreamed for centuries of causing rain at will. But how do modern climate control technologies work? It's not limited to simple silver iodide dispersal. The main magic happens at an altitude of 60 to 100 kilometers above Earth's surface in the atmospheric layer called the ionosphere. Humans have learned to affect the ionosphere using powerful radio waves. If you direct radio waves of a certain frequency and power at it, charged particles begin to oscillate, heating up similarly to how food heats up in a microwave. It sounds generally harmless, but the consequences can be dramatic. Most alarmingly, launching these processes doesn't require excessive energy. Artificial influence only gives the initial push, and then natural mechanisms do all the work themselves. It's like dropping a small stone on a snowy slope and causing a powerful avalanche. Controlling the precise consequences of such influence is practically impossible. To conduct ionospheric experiments, special installations called heating facilities were built in different countries worldwide. The most famous among them are the American HARP in Alaska and Russian Sura in Nizhny Novgorod region. Officially, these facilities are intended for scientific ionospheric research, but their location at military sites and the secrecy regime around some experiments generate many questions and theories. Importantly, ionospheric stations can affect areas located at significant distance from the installation itself. If you direct antennas at a certain angle, you can target the ionosphere above any point on the planet. China is not lagging behind in this technology race. In 2018, construction began on Hainan Island in the South China Sea of a station for studying ionospheric scattering of high-frequency radio waves, practically a complete analog of HARP. The official goal is scientific research, but the complex's location near strategically important sea routes and a secret submarine base suggests its dual purpose. Unlike the American HARP located in sparsely populated Alaska, the Chinese complex is situated in a densely populated area with busy air routes. This is illogical for a purely scientific facility, but makes sense if considered as an element of a defense system. Powerful electromagnetic radiation can disrupt radar stations, communication systems of patrol aircraft, and submarines of potential adversaries. But the history of climate weapons began long before Chinese ambitions. As in the nuclear race, Americans became pioneers. The Vietnam War became the first testing ground for weather manipulation technology for military purposes, and the results were stunning. From 1967 to 1972, American military conducted Operation Popeye. 5,500 tons of silver iodide and lead iodide were dispersed over Vietnam's jungles. The effect exceeded expectations. Precipitation in the Mekong River headwaters increased threefold, and the rainy season extended from 30 to 45 days. The catastrophic 1971 flood that inundated 10% of the country's territory is linked by many researchers precisely to this intervention. The operation's goal was to wash out the legendary Ho Chi Minh Trail, the network of paths through which Vietnamese partisans received supplies. Complete success wasn't achieved, but the very fact of being able to cause such large-scale weather changes made strategists worldwide think. After Vietnam, Americans didn't stop. Until 1983, research continued within Project Storm Fury, whose goal was even more ambitious: to subjugate hurricanes and typhoons. Imagine a weapon capable of directing a Hurricane Katrina-class storm toward enemy territory. According to unconfirmed data, in 1969, the USA actually redirected a hurricane toward Panama, with which relations were more than tense at the time. The Soviet Union didn't lag behind its rival. In the 1980s, jointly with Cuba, it launched a program aimed at studying possibilities for influencing atmospheric processes. The heir to Soviet developments became that same Nizhny Novgorod installation, Sura. All these studies took place in an era when international law hadn't yet managed to react to the new threat. The situation changed in 1978 when the UN adopted the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques. The document prohibits using weather modification technologies for military purposes, but leaves a loophole for peaceful use. China is now using precisely this loophole, having ratified the convention back in 2005. The entire program is presented exclusively as a civilian initiative for fighting droughts, hail, and forest fires. But what prevents redirecting these civilian technologies to solving military tasks at the right moment? In 2008, the world received a vivid demonstration of Chinese capabilities in weather control. During the Beijing Olympics, Chinese specialists literally cleared the sky of smog by dispersing special reagents in the atmosphere. Since then, Funding for research in this area has grown exponentially. China's weather control system today consists of tens of thousands of specialists and an impressive arsenal of technical means, from ground generators producing silver iodide to specialized rockets and aviation. In individual regions, for example in Xinjiang, these technologies already demonstrate impressive results. Annual hail was reduced by 70%. When we talk about Chinese equipment for ionospheric influence, we're discussing technologies capable of creating real electrical disturbances in the atmosphere. In 2018, a Chinese-Russian research group conducted an experiment over Vasilsursk village in Nizhny Novgorod region. Using the Sura radio complex, they created an area at 50 kilometers altitude, where the concentration of electrically charged particles was 10 times higher than in neighboring regions. The temperature of ionized gas increased by more than 100 degrees Celsius. What does this mean in practical terms? First of all, it's possible to create areas of high and low pressure, control air mass movement, and consequently control precipitation over vast territories. A professor from Nanjing Meteorological Institute, one of China's leading specialists in this field, openly stated in 2023 that weather modification technologies have moved from theoretical development to practical implementation on scales we don't even suspect. According to him, China already caused artificial precipitation over more than 1 million kilometers in 2022. This is an area comparable to South Africa's territory, but the real quantum leap in weather control technologies occurred in 2021 when Chinese scientists announced development of a new method based on electrical discharges. Instead of dispersing chemical reagents, they proposed using directed electrical impulses to ionize air and form rain clouds. In Tibet, autonomous region, a network of electrical towers up to 500 meters high is already being deployed, capable of generating directed discharges of up to 5,000 volts. It's assumed these stations will be able to attract humid air masses from the Indian Ocean, influencing monsoon trajectories. If the system operates at full capacity, China will be able to control up to 70% of precipitation in the Himalayan region, the main water source for India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Military strategists are already discussing possible scenarios for using this technology, but most frightening is the possibility of directing extreme weather phenomena toward enemy territory. According to modeling conducted at MIT, it's theoretically possible to direct such a flow toward a designated territory, causing catastrophic flooding. Russian scientists from Roshydromet note unusual cyclone behavior in recent years. Particularly alarming is the frequent formation of so-called blocking anticyclones, stable high-pressure areas that literally block cyclone paths, bringing either prolonged drought or persistent rains. Abnormal flooding in the Far East in 2023, when the Amur River level rose a record 8.5 meters, is already being linked by some specialists to possible artificial influence on atmospheric processes in the region. Actually, China's climate control program stands on 3 pillars of modern technology. First, traditional cloud seeding methods. Second, atmospheric ionization using powerful electromagnetic emitters. Third, and most advanced, modification of currents in the upper atmospheric layers using directed impulses. The last method is particularly interesting and simultaneously frightening. At 10 to 12 kilometer altitude above Earth, pass narrow and powerful air streams. Jet streams, real rivers in the sky carrying air masses at speeds up to 500 km/h. These atmospheric highways transport not only air, but also heat, playing a critical role in forming entire continents' climate. In 2022, Chinese scientists published computer modeling results demonstrating the possibility of fine-tuning these jet streams. By affecting a limited atmospheric section of just 100 kilometers Storen, one can create atmospheric blockade. Since 2018, when China activated its weather modification program, the number of blocking anticyclones in East Asia has significantly increased. Over the last 5 years, their number has grown by 37% compared to the historical average for this region. Control over precipitation in this region is literally power over life and death of millions of people. However, specialists from Beijing's Water Resources Institute mysteriously note that distribution of these additional precipitations is optimized to satisfy China's national interests. How optimized these precipitation are for neighboring countries' interests remains an open question. In 2023, water levels in the Ganges upper reaches dropped 40% compared to average long-term indicators, causing a water crisis in North India. Meanwhile, Chinese meteorological reports reported favorable weather conditions in Tibet's Ngari region, where this sacred Hindu river originates. Russia is in a particularly vulnerable position. East Siberian and Far Eastern regions bordering China may fall under the influence of Chinese weather modification systems. Modeling conducted by Raushai-Dramit specialists shows that artificial shifting of precipitation zones 200 to 300 kilometers south of the Russian-Chinese border could lead to southern Siberian areas becoming arid steppe within 15-20 years. Lake Baikal's condition causes particular alarm, the planet's largest freshwater reservoir. Over the last 5 years, water inflow to Baikal has decreased by 15%. This coincides with the period of active deployment of China's climate control system in adjacent regions. Of course, there's no direct evidence linking these phenomena, but the coincidence is thought-provoking. Take the HARP system, the old-timer in the world of ionospheric heaters. Since its creation in 1997, this complex has acquired an entire mythology, becoming the hero of conspiracy theories. When the Pentagon announced the project's closure in 2014, many perceived this as an attempt to divert public attention from real activity. But what actually happened? According to reports from the University of Alaska, which took the complex onto its balance sheet, from 2015 to 2023, HARP operated an average of only 120 hours per year, a drop in the ocean compared to Chinese installations, whose activity is measured in thousands of hours annually. Digital traces of climate influence can be found in unexpected places. Analysis of satellite data from 2018 to 2023 shows a striking picture. Over territories where China conducts official weather modification experiments, infrared sensors record characteristic concentric rings of electromagnetic anomalies with diameters from 10 to 70 kilometers. Professor of Atmospheric Sciences Carrie Emanuel from MIT notes, "We see electromagnetic disturbances that don't correspond to any known natural phenomena. Their regularity and geometric structure indicate artificial origin. It's like seeing perfectly circular crop circles. Nature rarely creates such regular forms. The climate domino effect causes particular concern. Earth's atmosphere is a unified system, where processes in one region inevitably affect others. By creating a high-pressure zone over 1 million kilometers to territory, you inevitably influence weather conditions within a 3,000–5,000 kilometer radius. It's like throwing a stone in a pond. Waves inevitably reach all shores." Russian climatologists from the Institute of Atmospheric Physics discovered another alarming pattern. Since 2018, the frequency of blocking anticyclone formation over East Siberia has increased by 42%. These atmospheric traffic jams delay cyclone movement, leading to extreme weather phenomena from abnormal summer heat to Siberian winter frosts. The geographic distribution of these anticyclones forms an almost perfect line along the Russian-Chinese border, raising questions about possible external influence. When China's system operates at full capacity, we'll witness a huge experiment, attempts at systematic weather control over an area larger than 5 million kilometers. Nothing like this has ever existed in human history. The consequences of such intervention could be catastrophic. International law lags far behind technological development. How do you determine whether prolonged drought in a neighboring country results from natural climate cycles or deliberate influence? How do you prove that catastrophic flooding was caused not by global climate change, but by targeted atmospheric process modification? In the absence of clear criteria and verification mechanisms, the world community finds itself defenseless against this new threat. Many countries are already preparing for the era of weather wars. The Pentagon has already invested more than $2 billion in developing systems for early detection of artificial atmospheric disturbances. Russia's defense ministry has created a special unit that will monitor ionospheric anomalies on the country's territory. And India has launched an ambitious Sky Shield program aimed at protecting its atmospheric sovereignty. The climate arms race has already begun, and it may prove more dangerous than the nuclear one. Nuclear weapons, for all their destructive power, have a clear signature of use. Climate weapons can strike without leaving traces, wearing down opponents through a series of seemingly natural disasters. What awaits us in the near future? The most likely scenario is formation of climate blocs and alliances combining their technological capabilities to protect common atmospheric space. Perhaps we'll see creation of an international atmospheric anomaly monitoring system capable of distinguishing natural processes from artificial interference. But most importantly, a new international legal framework will be required to regulate the use of weather modification technologies. And the consequences of using China's new development may still need to be studied.